This month marks the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, one of the darkest chapters in American history. But in the face of that tragedy, we saw extraordinary leadership that guided a city and a nation through pain and towards healing. In a time when our planet and our people face profound uncertainty, we need that same kind of courage, leaders who aren't afraid to stand up, speak out, and act boldly for the common good. Earlier today, and a little bit this evening, we listened to Chip talk about how his family is reviving lands and restoring ecosystems. Tonight we get to hear him talk in conversation with someone who has inspired him from the start, his father. So please welcome Chip Keating, Principal with Keating Investments and General Partner in Energy 11 and Energy Resources 12, as well as Frank Keating, the 25th Governor of Oklahoma and former President and CEO of the American Bankers Association.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you, sir.
We working?
I want you to know, as the dad, you would think I would start the conversation, but no. The alpha male in our family is Chip. So, Chip, may I turn the microphone and the stage over to you to kick this off?
I'll be honored. Thank you all for having us tonight. Trammell, thank you for what you're doing. I thought I'd start. I want my father, whom I adore and think the world of, and he led Oklahoma through, and frankly America through, the darkest domestic terrorism event that's ever occurred on U.S. soil was the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. And that happened 30 years ago. The 30th anniversary was last Saturday. As I thought about this conversation together, and I spoke earlier about land management, my passion, and how I met Trammell, and I feel like I've known Trammell for a very long time. I met Trammell through Rick Barron and the Wells Fargo team, Art Krasny, very good friends, and we went to Vail a couple of months ago. And Trammell and I sat down for lunch, and we instantly hit it off around our love and passion for conservation, Theodore Roosevelt, land management, and what is really my passion and love at home in Oklahoma. My dad and I own a ranch together outside of Oklahoma City, and I won't bore you with my land management speech and fire management speech that I gave earlier around prescribed burning, but I do think it's important as a transition around leadership. And Trammell and I are probably both very different people, and we share different beliefs. But the commonality that Trammell and I had when we met in Vail, and I think it'll be a long-lasting friendship, was around the commonality of how to make our society better, how to make our land better, how to be better stewards of our land through conservation management practices, being responsible, and that's a passion of mine. And as I think about putting politics aside, because I feel like we live in a very politicized world today, and we put politics aside. It's a very fitting time on the heels of the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing that occurred in 1995, 30 years ago, the deadliest attack ever to occur domestically on U.S. soil, where 168 souls were killed, 19 children. My father, I was a young man at the time. My father was the governor of Oklahoma. Politics aside, Frank Keating, Bill Clinton was in Oklahoma City last weekend. They were classmates at Georgetown, and they have different political beliefs. But at the time of that tragedy, it united us as a people. And I think it's a very good transition to hear the leadership from a state level that I'm very proud to call my father, who led Oklahoma City and our nation through our darkest time domestically in 1995. And on the heels of that, talking to Rick and talking to Trammell, those events, and President Clinton was with us in Oklahoma City last weekend. and really coming together in a very politically divided society we live today. So I wanted to turn it over to my dad. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm grateful for Trammell. I'm grateful for what you are doing with EarthX and the conversation that we're having on how to frankly save something that's very important to all of us, politics aside. And so I'll turn this over to my dad.
And I want everybody to know Chip will remain the alpha male after those very nice comments. But you can tell I'm a boy that went to Catholic schools, but e pluribus unum is from many one. And all of us as Americans, I may as an Oklahoman whose father was from Pennsylvania, whose mother was from Illinois, who put 2 children, including Chip, through Southern Methodist for college. I may be an Okie chairing as the former chairman of the University of Oklahoma Regents when we play Texas in football, but at times of crisis and trial, at times of challenge and patriotism, we're all together. We are, in fact, e pluribus unum. Of my 4 grandparents, Quaker, Methodist, Presbyterian, Catholic, to suggest we sat at the table and yelled at each other about religion is an untruth. So what happens when an unmistakably evil, unhesitatingly evil, to the moment of his execution, never suggested any remorse for murdering 168 of my neighbors and friends? In my life, I supervised most of the law enforcement establishment under President Reagan. For example, the U.S. Secret Service lost 6 employees in Oklahoma City, the worst horror show in the history of the Secret Service. We lost DEA, U.S. Customs was under me, prisons, marshals, Interpol, the Immigration Service, the Border Patrol. Many of those agencies, many of those organizations were in the Murrah building on April 19, 1995, when at 9:02 a.m., an individual who was unmistakably evil blew up not a federal courthouse, as my friend Bill Clinton thought it was at first. Gosh, I guess we hope we have minimal casualties. I said, Mr. President, that is not going to be the case. That is a federal office building. It is filled with people. And it's 9:02 a.m. and 9:02 a.m. and whoever did this blew the front half of it away. There is no way we don't have enormous casualties. Well, the reason I say that is because, as Chip indicated, the Oklahoma City tragedy tragically remains the worst terrorist event, domestic, in the history of the United States. You know, on 9/11, all those wonderful people who were killed, there was no one to prosecute because everybody who did it were dead. In the Oklahoma City tragedy, as a result of a state trooper, and Chip is a former state trooper, as a result of great police work and great God work, Timothy McVeigh, the individual who murdered all these people, license plate had blown off the back of his car, and going north out of Oklahoma City, a very courageous and professional state trooper pulled him over and said, "Hey, what is this?" And then he looked, and in his belt was a pistol. So, of course, he grabbed him out of the car, arrested him. The FBI today, and I'm a former FBI agent and a former United States attorney, but the FBI's largest criminal case domestically in the history of our country is the Oklahoma City tragedy. The FBI expended the effort of 2,200 agents, some $18 million of cost to find out who did this. Well, Timothy McVeigh, a veteran, purportedly a patriot, is an individual that saw in the United States government utter irredeemable evil. Well, if you don't like ATF, and ATF used to be under me, then fine, call your congressman, write your congressman, and try to repeal ATF, which I think is a superb alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, does superb law enforcement work. But don't blow up 19 children. In New York, and Rudy Giuliani, I used to work for him when I was U.S. Attorney, then he later worked for me, but Rudy didn't work for anybody. But in any event, Giuliani invited me to come after 9/11 to see what they're doing, and we sent a lot of help to them because they sent so much help to us, urban search and rescue teams. And it was astonishing to me how the New York family that helped us really brought to all of us the conclusion that we're in this together. This isn't a football game. It isn't a soccer game. People, evil people from the outside who didn't look any different than me, are the ones that did this. Initially, one of the statements, matter of fact, Bill Clinton was the first person, President Clinton, to call me after it occurred. I had no idea. I'd been in office for 3 months. I barely knew the mayor, the police chief, the fire chief. I had appointed the National Guard commander, already a 2-star general, a Democrat, ace of aces in Vietnam. And to me, I was the first Republican governor since the 60s. And 40% of my cabinet were Democrats. My grandfather was a congressman from Illinois, served 1 term and went back to his bank. But for me, my mother, the Democrat, my dad, the Republican from Pennsylvania, I just grew up in an environment where we all had to work together. So when the tragedy occurred and the phone rang and it was Bill Clinton, he said to me, "What do you need?" Now, I assumed that would be the question, not the answer. But what do you need? I said, well, we have 1,000 firefighters then in Oklahoma City. We have 1,000 police officers. I said, Bill, I've been here for 3 months. I barely know anybody. I guarantee you within 8 hours, everybody's going to be face down in the mud. They're going to be exhausted. Whatever help you can send, please do. Well, he sent that help. I found out, and this is a really important message for all of us, whether we're from Texas or Oklahoma or any place in the United States, it was urgently important to select for these positions not political friends and classmates, but people who knew what they were going to do and would kick ass and take names. The morning after, and I hate to say this in front of my state trooper son, I went to the headquarters. The FBI was coming in to take care of the criminal case, which obviously was the case. And I saw this big bus that said Oklahoma Highway Patrol. And so I got on the bus, and here was the commissioner, who I later dismissed, and the chief, who I later dismissed, smoking cigarettes, having coffee, and enjoying themselves. And I said, excuse me, don't mean to interrupt, but what are you doing? And they said, oh, putting out the cigarettes. And I said, you belong out there, like I do. We have agony. We don't have ecstasy. We have agony, and we have to attend to the people who are injured and killed, and we don't know where they are or who they are, but they're someplace. Well, my wife, Kathy, showed up with me, and the sun was not rising yet. It was probably 5 in the morning after, and here were all these searchlights on the building, and Bill Clinton had produced. They had sent during the night a number of teams from the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Group. And up the street was coming a firefighter. And he had his cape, if you will, over his shoulder. I didn't recognize his uniform. Obviously, he was one of the FEMA guys that had shown up from some other place. He came from Maryland, from Montgomery County, Maryland. And what does a governor do? So I stepped out in the street and I said, thank you very much for being here. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm the governor of Oklahoma. I would have said, well, nice to meet you, and I'd keep going, but he didn't. He took his finger and stuck it in my chest and he said, well, then you find out who did this, because all I pulled from that building was a child's finger and an American flag. And he stormed on up the street. My conclusion instantly, and it was accurate, these are young fathers, and they saw all these babies spread all over the floor, 19 children, and all these dozens and dozens and dozens of people, broken bodies, missing heads and arms, all murdered because some guy didn't like Uncle Sam. I mean, I was just horrified. That guy, me, all of us were terribly affected by PTSD as a result of what we saw. But what happened then was people from all over the state came and said, you need boots. We heard on the radio, here are my boots on my feet, or here are new boots. We understand that you need other equipment, warmer clothes. It was raining and cold, and here's what I'm going to give you. Well, the first week passed, and the first urban search and rescue team was leaving, and my wife and I thanked each of them, kind of my experience on the street, each of them at a breakfast. We served them breakfast, and thank you so much for coming and helping us. And one guy took out of his pocket a dollar bill, and he waved it in the air and said, hey, Governor, you recognize what this is? I said, I'm in politics. That's a dollar bill. I recognize that. And he said, no, it's not a dollar bill. It's an Oklahoma dollar. Let me tell you, we came here a week ago. I never had to spend a cent for anything. Laundry, didn't have cell phones, calling home, talking to my wife and kids, food, clothing, boots for my dog to go dig through the rubble and certainly through the glass. I never had to spend a nickel for anything. In New York, we paid $5 for a sack of ice. The first Trade Center bombing, we didn't pay for anything. We can't believe it. All of us will be grateful to you, because this morning we got up and there was a rose on each of our beds. And who did that? My wife. But a prayer service to thank us for being here, to bless and care for those who came to take care of us. Those things don't happen by accident. You know, your culture is our culture is your culture. I couldn't believe the willingness of people from all over who said, look, I'm here to help. I'm not here to hurt. I'm not here to take advantage of anybody. Later, James Lee Witt, the head of FEMA, said to me, you'll be pretty proud to hear this. In the recent history of the United States that I'm familiar with, Oklahoma City and Oklahoma were the only place where we stepped back. We knew you, but all these other people, the Oklahoma City mayor, the police chief, fire chief, all these volunteers we didn't know, no surprise, New Yorkers wanted to take over the whole thing, and they all stepped back. Everybody did and said, these Okies are in charge. They know how to do it, and they will do it. And I look back, and here Bill Clinton came to town. I'm a Republican, he's a Democrat. We spoke repeatedly about the need for brotherhood, sisterhood, goodness, caring, sharing, loving, serving. Every person in this room, my kids, Chip's an example, former state trooper, everybody needs to serve, to keep us together, to bring us together, to keep us together, to bring us together so that we can be e pluribus unum, from many one. And his message was, for me, as a Republican who looked askance, although we went to school together, was exactly mine. The two of us spoke to law students, to victims, to families, to the families of all those who come every anniversary to say, I love you guys. You can't believe how wonderful you all were. And we stood together. There was a guy, a CBS News national correspondent, when we dedicated the memorial, and there are 168 chairs. The Pentagon has a similar that they borrowed from us. 168 chairs honoring those who were killed, including 19 small chairs. And Charlie Gibson from CBS told me, he said, I came to see the memorial dedicated. I have no idea what was there or who was there. But I'm getting my bag, and there was an attractive younger woman getting her bag. And she looked at me and said, "You're Charlie Gibson, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm with CBS News, I am." I thought she was a reporter, very elegantly dressed. And he said, "Are you with one of the networks?" She said, No. My father was a Secret Service agent who was killed in, matter of fact, President Clinton's principal agent, killed in the bombing. And I said, meaning Charlie Gibson, "I'm so sorry for you." And she said, "No, don't be sorry, because today is the last time my sister and I will sit in our dad's lap." And he said, I didn't know what she was talking about. I got to the bombing site, and here were these chairs, all of these chairs, and where are those two girls? Sitting on their father's chair. And he said, I just broke down and cried. That love, that attention, that affection, that commitment, that selflessness continues. And what does it say? That if we're in a position at the city or state level, bad things will happen. We have tornadoes, you guys have tornadoes. We didn't expect this bombing. But the reality is a culture developed that we all are together. We owe each other a part, a portion, a microcosm of our lives so we can make it through with other people's lives as our brother and sister. And that is exactly what we did. And I'm proud of it. I'm grief-stricken, and I never want to go into the Memorial Museum because my twin brother was a Marine officer in Vietnam. And one day standing out there, here was a leg sticking out of the rubble with a polished black shoe, a blue pant, and a red stripe. And I said to the people with me, "That's a Marine Corps recruiter. Let's get we always did. We get an honor guard in to get that person out." Years later, I went to the bombing site with some people who were there at the Prix de West, the Western Art event. And I walked out as you leave the museum, and there were all the faces of the victims. And there was the face of a young Hispanic man, 28 years old, Captain Guzman, United States Marine Corps. And I just sobbed. Chip was with me. I just sobbed. I couldn't believe that the devil would permit this to happen, and it happened. But we've come together as a society. Oklahoma City is stronger than it's ever been, and we did so because of the goodness and the selflessness, the generosity and the godliness of the people from Texas and many other states who came to help us, and we're very grateful. God bless all of you.